Behind that unmoving face, I can tell you exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking about the cold. Not the delegation chief walking toward me. Not the motorcade idling 30 yards back, exhaust curling up like something impatient. Not the clicking of his heels on the forecourt stone. The cold. The specific bone-wet cold of an October morning at the eastern gate of Aldenmere. The kind that settles into your shoulders and stays there the way a decision stays with you. Quietly, without asking permission. I had been on post for 2 hours and 40 minutes when he arrived. The delegation was scheduled for 9:15. It was 8:40. That was the first thing wrong with the morning. The second thing wrong was the way he walked. I have been standing at these gates long enough to read a man by his walk before he opens his mouth. Some people cross the forecourt with awareness. They feel the stone, feel the ceremony of the place, feel that they are moving through something larger than themselves. And some people cross it like they are crossing a car park, like the gates are a door to hold for them, like the guards are furniture to rearrange. He walked like the second kind. He was the senior protocol official of a visiting foreign delegation, a man of consequence in his own capital. I will give him that. 60 years old, perhaps. Silver hair cut very close. A dark overcoat that cost more than my monthly pay. He carried no briefcase, no folder, nothing. Men who carry nothing have usually arranged for others to carry everything. That tells you something about them before they speak. He stopped 8 feet from me. I was at the Eastern Ceremonial Post, my post for the better part of 11 years. I stand 4 feet in from the iron gate, rifle at my side, eyes forward. The gate behind me is the formal entrance to the Eastern Reception Hall. It is not a service entrance. It is not a side route. It is the Eastern Gate, and it opens on ceremony, not convenience. On a day with a scheduled delegation, with a state visit confirmed in writing 3 weeks prior, with a reception inside that had been arranged, catered, and staffed since Monday, that gate opens at 9:15, not 8:40. He looked at me the way men like him sometimes do, like he was working out whether I was a lock or a man, like he was calculating which approach costs less time. Then he pointed, not at me, past me, at the door. "Step aside," he said. "We are early. It should not matter." His accent was formal. His tone was the tone of a man who had said those 2 words, in various languages, in various corridors, for 40 years without encountering any resistance worth remembering. I did not step aside. I looked straight ahead. Past him, past the motorcade, out to the far wall of the forecourt where the morning light lay flat and gray against the stone. He waited. 6-7 seconds. Did you hear me? That is the question they always reach for when the first order doesn't land. Did you hear me? As though the problem could only be hearing. I heard him. I heard everything. I heard the motorcade engine cycling behind him. I heard his aide-de-camp shifting his weight on the cobblestones 20 feet back. I heard the thin wind moving through the gate iron above my head. I heard, underneath all of it, the sound this forecourt makes when it is being treated as something less than it is. A kind of held silence, as though the stone itself is deciding whether to be offended. I said nothing. I have learned in 11 years that saying nothing in the right register is its own kind of language. Silence delivered without apology, without discomfort, without the slightest physical signal that you are waiting for the conversation to be over. That silence communicates with remarkable precision. It says, "This line exists. You are standing at it. I am not moved by either your authority or your schedule." He stepped closer, 3 feet now, close enough that I could see the precise line of his collar, close enough that I could smell the cedar of his overcoat, close enough that most people, I think, would feel the pull to explain themselves, to say something placating, something that made the tension smaller. I felt no such pull. I want to be honest about that. There is a version of this story where I tell you I was fighting an urge to speak, fighting the instinct to give ground. That would make me seem more relatable, perhaps. But it would not be true. What I felt, standing in that coat of mine, in that cold, with this man 3 feet away demanding passage, I had no authority to grant ahead of schedule. What I felt was stillness. The complete, untroubled stillness of a man who knows exactly where his line is and has no interest in debating it. I have not always had that stillness. It took me a long time to find it. Under my left glove, I wear my wedding band. I have worn it since the day I put it on, which was a Thursday in June 14 years ago. I wore it on every post before that day and on every post since. I wore it the morning of the funeral, which was 3 years ago, this November, and I wore it on the post I returned to 4 weeks later, because there was nothing else I knew how to do, That was as clear, as precise, as without ambiguity. "Stand here, do not move. Hold the line." She would have laughed at all of this, I think. She was a practical woman. She had very little patience for ceremony in the abstract, but she understood why it mattered to me. Understood that it was not the uniform, or the gate, or the polished brass. It was the fact of the thing, the reliability of it. The knowledge that there were certain lines that held, that did not negotiate, that were not subject to the mood of whoever happened to be standing at them on a given Tuesday. She trusted that in me. I held that thought exactly as long as it took for the delegation chief to put his hand on my shoulder. Not a shove. I want to be precise. Not an act of aggression in the way a struck man can claim aggression. A hand, placed. The way a man places his hand on a door handle that isn't opening fast enough. The gesture of a man who has grown so accustomed to resistance yielding that he has stopped distinguishing between doors and people. 1 second. That is how long his hand was on my shoulder. I did not move my eyes. I did not turn my head. I did not lower my rifle or raise it. I made no sound and altered no expression. I was a post at the eastern gate of Aldenmere, and I was holding it, and I was going to go on holding it for as long as the morning required. What I did in that 1 second was make a single, controlled quarter turn of my head, not toward him, not to look at him. Toward the secondary entrance to my left, the interior approach from the equerries' corridor, where I knew, from 11 years at this post, that the sound of footsteps on marble at this hour, on a state visit morning, meant one specific thing. The footsteps were already there. George Aldwych has been palace equerry for 19 years. He is a slight man, 62, silver-haired like the delegation chief. But where the delegation chief's silver said power, Aldwich's said something quieter. Duration. The kind of patience that only comes from having watched a very great number of important men discover. In this forecourt, that importance is contextual. He appeared at the side arch, unhurried, hands clasped behind him. His morning coat was immaculate. His expression was the expression of a man who had been briefed, who had anticipated, and who had already decided how the next 60 seconds would proceed. He crossed the forecourt at a pace that I can only describe as deliberately moderate, not running, that would have suggested a problem, not sauntering, that would have suggested indifference, the pace of a man who is entirely in charge of the situation and is choosing as a courtesy to let you realize it gradually. He stopped at the delegation chief's shoulder. "Director General," he said. "Quiet. The way you say a name when what you mean is, I know exactly who you are and what your rank is, and we are about to have a very brief conversation about one of them." The Director General removed his hand from my shoulder without any visible sign of urgency. "The equerry," he said, an acknowledgement, the opening of a negotiation. "The eastern gate opens at 9:15, Aldwych said. "That was confirmed in the state visit protocol delivered to your office on the 4th of the month, 12 days ago." He paused, not to gather his thoughts. He had already gathered them. The pause was for the Director General's benefit, a space in which to understand that what was being offered here was not an explanation but a record. "The reception hall is being prepared. Your delegation will be received with full honors at 9:15. In the meantime, the eastern forecourt is available to you for—" Another pause. "Smaller. Your comfort." The Director General looked at me. I was looking straight ahead. He looked at Aldwych. Aldwych was waiting with the pleasant, untroubled expression of a man who had said everything he intended to say and was under no pressure to say anything further. There is a particular sound that a powerful man makes when he has run the calculation and found that the numbers do not favor him. It is not a sound of defeat exactly. It is the sound of a man reclassifying, deciding that this is a moment he will choose not to remember rather than one he will contest. It is a very quiet sound, a small shift of weight, a breath not quite released, a stillness that is different from composure. He made that sound. Then he turned, not sharply, not with any visible concession of ground, and walked back toward his aide-de-camp, who had been standing, I noticed, with the frozen attentiveness of a man watching something he could not predict and had no role in. Aldwych let a beat pass. Then he looked at me, briefly, in the way he sometimes does. Not a nod, not a word, not any of the gestures by which one man signals approval to another, simply a look. The particular look of someone who has been in this forecourt long enough to know that certain men hold certain lines without any instruction to do so, and who has, over 19 years, come to think of that as a fact of the world as reliable as the stone under his feet. Then he went back inside. The square went quiet. I stood. The wind moved through the gate iron above me. The motorcade engine idled. The Director General stood at the far side of the forecourt with his aide-de-camp, their voices too low to carry, and waited. At 9:15, the gate opened. It opened the way it always opens, cleanly, but without ceremony, by the interior guard on the latch. The Director General entered with his delegation, and they were received with full honors, as promised. The state visits proceeded. I have no knowledge of what passed inside. That is not my post. My post is here. I stood at the eastern gate through the rest of the morning watch. The delegation's motorcade eventually departed. The forecourt returned to its ordinary stillness. Tourists at the perimeter railing. The distant sound of the changing of the guard ceremony at the northern approach. The gray October light moving across the stone as the clouds shifted. Sometime in the middle of the afternoon watch, the cold settled back in. I notice sometimes that I have stopped minding the cold. I do not know precisely when that happened. I think it was in the first winter after the funeral, when the cold was simply there and I was simply here. And the idea of minding it seemed to require a kind of energy I had decided to spend elsewhere. She had always minded it for the both of us. Her capacity for complaint about the cold was, I will say, extraordinary, theatrical, generous, completely sincere. She produced it the way she produced most things, with complete commitment and no embarrassment about volume. I thought about that, standing at the eastern gate at 2:30 in the afternoon, and the thought arrived without weight, without the particular gravity it carries some days. Just the fact of her, just the specific, ordinary warmth of knowing precisely who someone was. I shifted my left hand along the rifle stock. I could feel, through the glove, through the white cotton and the polished leather grip, the faint pressure of the band on my finger. It is always there. It is always there. The way the stone is always there. The way the cold is always there. The way the line is always there. I looked straight ahead. The forecourt held its quiet. I held mine. The gate does not ask whether you are ready for what comes at it. The cold does not ask whether you have somewhere warmer to be. The morning does not ask whether you are whole. It simply arrives, and the post is here, and the line is here, and the only question that matters, the only one I have ever known how to answer without hesitations, is whether you are going to hold it. I was going to hold it, as I have every morning for 11 years, as I will hold it tomorrow.